Hey everybody, I wanted to look at this Caro-Kann game that I played. ChessGoals just released a tactics course for the Caro-Kann repertoire where we go through every one of the chapters and present a bunch of puzzles that came from that section. And so I wanted to go through some of the recent Caro-Kann games that I've played and see if we can come up with any tactical ideas here. So this is a game that went pretty terribly for me, but we're going to look at how we could have improved and some discussions about how to handle openings when like a rare move is played. So here my opponent went e4, and of course we go c6 going into the Caro-Kann. I played knight f3 takes, and then this d4. So we're in what looks like it's probably going to be an exchange variation. So we play knight c6 and then bishop to e3, which is kind of a rare and weird move. I checked the database. This is played like almost never. And so I've never faced this. So the key crux is that, like, is white going to play c3 and we go into an exchange? Or is white going to play c4 and we have a panov? And I didn't really know which way it was going to go, and I wasn't sure. So if it's a panov that we're expecting, we should play knight f6, and we're happy. If we're expecting c3, then we should play bishop to g4. I played bishop to g4, sort of hoping for c3, and we just have a normal kind of exchange variation. That's not what I got. So instead, we got c4, and now we're straight up in a panov. And I really wasn't clear how this affected how our repertoire normally works. Because normally, yes, we want to play this bishop g4 in the panov, but it's later. And we normally leave this bishop setting at home, and we play knight f6, we play g6, we play a6, and we often play this bishop out to e6 in a lot of variations. So I'm definitely clearing on my own, and I've been move ordered out of the repertoire. And I play knight f6, which is normal. I actually think the e6 is quite interesting because black can go wrong. So if they make the natural takes, we can actually take back with the queen. And then after knight c3, we can play this tricky move, bishop takes f3. And if they take our queen, we're actually great because we take their queen. They say they give this check, and we just play this king d7. And yes, they can take a rook, but we get to keep this bishop. And this knight is definitely going to fall, and we would just have a great position if we went down this line. So I actually think the e6 is probably the better try here, because it does create some more problems over knight f6. But knight f6 probably should be the same. White shouldn't go for this. Then c3, and this is where I really started to go wrong. So instead of assessing that this is like a new position, I'm in an unfamiliar territory, and just trying to play chess, I was still trying to like transpose into our repertoire. And so I played a6, which is horrific, actually. If we just play e6, we have a pretty normal game. Again, if they capture, we can take back with the knight, and we're just going to develop our bishop out to e7, and we're going to play against a normal isolated queen pawn. If c5, well, now we can go back to g6, and we can try to prepare this kind of a move. Maybe not g6 immediately. Perhaps we can take. We can try to play for b6. We've got lots of ideas here. But instead, the game went a6, and takes, and I took with the knight, and now bishop to c4. And I remember I'm still thinking in my head, I'm still like, okay, I'm still going to work my way into our repertoire. And I remember some ideas where we had this bishop coming out early to e3, where we capture on e3, which again, still totally equal and fine. And then f takes e3, and then the idea was to play g6, bishop out to h6, and then we're going to put pressure on this. We're going to play e5, we'll castle, and we had like a great game. So this is what I was thinking. I'm still not really assessing the position. I'm still trying to like squeeze my way into something familiar. So I played g6, which is a blunder, and now we get to like a really clear tactical shot. So in the interest of tactical positions, take a moment and see if you can figure out what the best move for white is. Well, my opponent found it. It's just bishop takes f7, and of course we have to take back. Knight g5 comes, and they pick up the bishop, And I mean, the game is just over here. This is totally resignable. So this would be this was a pretty terrible way for this game to go, and just shows that like when you're too focused on trying to like force yourself back into your repertoire when you get surprised, it really doesn't work that well. So I looked at an illustrative game that reached the same kind of position. So this is a game between Magnus Carlsen as the white pieces and Alireza Firouzja with the white pieces, and it you see gets to this exact position where I played a6 and got soundly destroyed. Here, Magnus with the white pieces and Firouzja makes the better e6. So Magnus goes ahead and takes, and we play knight takes, and now bishop to b5 comes out. And this is kind of an obnoxious move because we don't really want to have our pawn on c6 weakened, but in the interest of time, we couldn't really prevent it. This is what my move a6 was trying to stop happening, but this is going to demonstrate it's actually not so bad at all. We have some really clear ideas. So bishop out to b4, saying that well, I can play that game too. So takes, and now the queen, Magnus plays queen a4, which is actually an immediate blunder that Firouzja didn't take advantage of. He could play bishop takes f3 here, and if you take this with check, we actually have the kind of unbelievable king to e7. Our king is totally safe here. This would be amazing, and you're forced to take here, and then we get rook c8. The queen comes back out, and we can just play queen d7. And we would love to have a queen trade here. So takes, trying to defend this pawn, but we can take this anytime we want. And we don't even take back. This would be an excellent turn of events for this game. I mean, how every single pawn in White's camp is weak. Our pawns are nice. Our king is centrally located. Our rook's active. We're going to get our piece back. This bishop is blunted by this pawn. This would be a really great thing to have happen. Instead, after queen a4, Firouzja chose to take on c6 because it comes with check, and then he just castles. Again, saying that, yes, you can take this pawn, but I'm going to get this one back. And these trades he's saying, are going to favor black because there's less counterplay for white, and we're just going to, and we've traded some pieces, and d4 is going to become weak. So knight e5 comes. We, of course, don't want to lose the bishop. And then white chooses the castle, and then we take back the pawn. Actually, we had another interesting moment. Kind of a theme that comes up in this game several times, that black didn't choose to play f6, which would be a fantastic move here. We don't really need to defend this pawn. It's essentially undefensible. So after f6 played, we can now play queen d7. This pin is really obnoxious. We're just threatening actually just to bring a rook over and just straight up win the knight. c4 is just about the only move, but now we have bishop takes, and then bishop to d5, and again we're threatening to win this, and d5 is the only move. And after takes and queen to b5 is the only move that holds the balance here. Against anything else, we're have a winning advantage, and I don't think b5 is all that obvious to play. So this was a nice opportunity that that Firouzja missed here in the game. Instead, after castles, he played knight to c3, hitting the queen. The queen comes in, takes, and we just move the knight back. I mean, again, maybe rook c8 would have been nice to have brought our rook to an active square with tempo. But knight d5, and then rook comes to ac1, and then queen. Now we play this rook c8 with tempo, and Firouzja actually makes a sort of hilarious move. He plays queen to b6. So take a look at the tactic here and see if you can come up with. This is an outrageous blunder. Queen takes c8. We can't take back because rook comes. We have to block with the queen, and we just get checkmated. So we can't take the queen back. Anyway, that wasn't played. Instead, Magnus decides he wants to keep the queens on, and it avoids the queen trade. The queen trade would be nice, because if we trade queens, then this just becomes a little bit weaker, and your attacking chances are virtually nil here. So comes out, and now it just brings the rook into the center. I mean, Alaruz has missed a few chances for better play, and now we just kind of they maneuver their pieces for a while. So h3 comes, just h6, rook comes to c5, and now the queen drops back. we're kind of trying to put some pressure on this diagonal here. And rook fc1, and now e4. And the threat is to take and then take. And this is a nice idea because it induces f3. And now we have a weakness to play with around the king. We have these weak dark squares. The bishop, of course, drops back to b5. And the bishop drops back to b2. Perhaps it's going to come here and try to control this square. It doesn't really like just staring at the d4 pawn. So knight to f4 gets played. And the queen comes across, and he just drops back, saying, okay, fine, maybe the knight didn't belong on f4. The queen comes in, and we trade. So finally, Firouzja gets the queen trade that he's been trying for so long, and takes back, and now this rook to a8, saying that perhaps I can try to play this way. I'll bring this rook here, put pressure on this pawn, and maybe I can make something of this. Note that this bishop does a great job of playing on this side of the board, and also does the knight, whereas white's pieces are kind of on the king side and not really doing a particular lot. The position's totally in the balance, though. Knight to c6 gets played, comes across. His idea is to come here, put pressure on the pawn. g4, g6, and now king h2, and rook b7. Now here, white should almost certainly have played knight to a5, holding onto this pawn. But now you have like, this knight is stuck defending this pawn, and that's kind of obnoxious. And we still have some ideas to come into here. We can perhaps swing back across to this way, exchange pressure on this side of the board. And this is just a little bit passive. Your rooks are never coming in. You can't defend the pawn this way. You don't want to defend the pawn this way. I kind of see why he didn't want to go for this, but this would have been a better way to hold the balance. Instead, Magnus chooses to play king g3, just shunting the pawn, and saying that my king is going to be safe and solid here, and that my active pieces should mean something, that probably assumed he was going to get this pawn back. Because he now brings the knight over this way. Now bishop to e4, taking advantage that we now have a rook in, and this f3 square is quite weak. Comes across, and here Firouzja misses another opportunity. So like, this is another good moment to pause and try to look for the tactics, because there's a crushing blow here. And it's just bishop b1 was what was played. f6 is much, much nicer. The point being that, yes, you can grab this, but I'll take, you take, and then I get the f-file, and I'm attacking this pawn from two directions, and you're in huge trouble. Yeah, you can take another pawn, but I'll take this way. And you can't come to h4 because this is going to be a lights-out situation. It's just mate in a couple moves, actually. So here, we take, you come here, and just knight f4, mate. Even if it wasn't mate, we pick up the rook. So you can't go that way, so you would have to play the opposite direction, coming back here, allowing me to take this with check, and we're almost certainly mating sometime soon anyway. But instead he misses that idea and plays bishop back to b1, rook to ec1, now f6, finally f6. And the knight gives a check, we have to trade off a set of rooks, the king comes and tries to hide, and now again we could come back with this f4. And how are you going to defend this f3 pawn? Well, you're not. Instead he plays king to g6, just trying to remain a little bit safer with his king. But here, and now white has this idea of knight c5, and stopping this move, which is why you needed to play it immediately. Doesn't play king c5. Now bishop to e4 comes, and this time h5 happens, but king just comes to f7, and now c5, but it's a little bit too late because you come with check. You're forced to come here. You've got to defend the bishop. The knight, why not knight f4 check? Knight f4 check seems to be probably a similar idea. The king's got to move. We drop the bishop back to d5. We play here. We win this, or we're going to win everything now. There's really not much to be done. Instead, he plays f5. I guess his purpose is that he wants to have an escape square for his king, and he says that this is not a problem because we're just going to take this way, and we have a nice pass pawn and some real issues here. So we try to say you come across. Well, not e3 check comes, king to h2 happens, and we can at very least just take this with check, and we're up several pawns, and we're going on to win the game. But anyway, a really nice example from Alireza on how to handle this position, and probably has a lot to do with why Magnus Carlsen respects Firouzja, because he can play games like this where he kind of makes Magnus look kind of sad, to be honest. Anyhow, I hope you enjoyed this game, and I'll see you guys later. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.